Welcome everyone to the CareCast. I'm Brian.
And I'm Matt. And today we're going to be giving you 10 tips on how to make your Itch.io page better.
Yeah, it's a topic that's been on my mind recently. Been looking at a lot of different Itch.io pages since we run our little show on Twitch, Indie Hunters. And it's exposed me to a lot of different pages, and I've noticed some patterns that make a page look good or make it look not so good. And so I compiled a list of a few elements of an Itch.io page that I thought we would address and let y'all know how you can improve your Itch.io pages with these 10 hot tips. I guess disclaimer is that these tips might not apply to you if, one, you're working on a jam game and its page, because jam games are made pretty quickly, and the jam games I have seen, not a whole lot of attention is paid to the jam game page because it is just a jam and it's a quick, simple 1 week jam, 1 month jam, whatever. So I'm guessing the expectation is that once the jam's over, nobody's really going to check the game out, but some people do, so it may be worth it to put a little bit of polish on your page. But these tips, you might not need to use them all if you're just making a simple jam game page. The other group of people it might not apply to is those trying to make a minimalist page where it's just the game and a web player and a short one-line description and nothing else, no comments, no screenshots, nothing. So all of this just goes out the window with that kind of page. So let's start. Let's jump right into it. Number 1. But it's actually number 0 because arrays, am I right? You know, all my fellow programmers out there.
Oh.
Starting array counts at 0. Hell yeah.
Some programmer humor.
Yeah. But the first tip, and probably the big kahuna takeaway of the whole thing, or at least the one thing you should put the most thought and effort into, is the thumbnail. So the thumbnail is the most important thing, because that is the gatekeeper, or maybe not the gatekeeper, but the gateway, or it's the, I don't know, fuck this analogy, whatever, scratch that.
It's the first thing that most people who are searching for something on Itch.io are going to see. Yeah,
okay, yes. Stupid analogy aside, it's like your first impression of a game is what you see in that thumbnail. So this is something you should really strive to get right if you want people to click on your thumbnail and check out your page and check out your game. If that's your goal. If it's not, then just don't have a thumbnail. You can just as easily not have a thumbnail. But if you want people to click and check out your game, I've thought of what goes into a good thumbnail. When it comes to Itch.io thumbnails, you can have a GIF or a static image. And from what I've seen, both of them are acceptable. They both work pretty well. I guess it depends on how art savvy you are. Do you have the capacity to make some sort of animated doohickey whatnot for your thumbnail? If you do, that's great. If not, that's perfectly acceptable as well. A thumbnail with just your title art and a nice background works just as fine as any animated whatnot. And I see a lot of thumbnails where when it has a GIF, it's usually a GIF of some gameplay, which I thought is kind of neat to give like a very minute taste of what the game is or what the rest of the page holds. So that might also be something to consider when you're making your thumbnail. And I guess it's worth noting that if you do make a GIF, it'll have that GIF watermark in the corner. It's pretty tiny, so I don't see it being a big problem, but if that's something that matters to you, it's good to know about it. Another big thing to be aware of is Itch.io's weird thumbnail aspect ratio, which I found out to be 214 by 170. It may vary when you do a proper search and get search results. It might be a little larger than those dimensions I just gave, But regardless, it's not a standard aspect ratio. That's something to keep in mind when you're making the actual thumbnail, because the last thing you want to do is spend a lot of time making a cool, dope thumbnail and then have it awkwardly cropped or have it upscaled in some weird way, and then it's got noise added to the image. I'm looking at it right now, and it says minimum 315 by 250, recommended 630 by 500. So those are your dimensions for the thumbnail. I guess the dimensions I rattled off earlier were just for video games on the front page of Itch.io, because that's where I stole the screenshot for and measured it. So scratch that. Go with 315 by 250 minimum and recommended 630 by 500.
I see. Yeah, there's multiple resolutions that your thumbnail could appear at depending on what page the people are on. But yeah, you want the big one. You want to start with that, and then
you'd much rather have your image downscaled than upscaled.
Yes. Yep.
Regardless, though, it's a really weird set of dimensions, so just keep that in mind if you want a fresh, dope thumbnail to appear when people search for your game.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know this because I haven't put a game on anything but Itch.io, but I think everything probably has different sizes for like the key art or, thumbnails for games. So you just got to look at where you're deploying your game to and like keep all that info handy so you know how to make your key art.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider, because we're mostly focusing on Itch.io here, but I know for sure Steam displays your thumbnail at different resolutions, so you'll want to get those numbers too if you're putting your game out on Steam. But just do some research depending on what platform you're trying to release your game on. Another thing that is very close to your thumbnail is what Itch.io calls the tagline, I guess. Yeah, and it's basically that little, it's more like a headline than a description that goes under your thumbnail, and I see so many of those where it's so long that it turns into an ellipsis at the end, so the tagline just cuts itself off mid-sentence. It'll say something like, a super epic awesome game about ... Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
That really helps.
Yeah.
But I guess to be fair, the tagline isn't paid too much attention to. I don't think it's has too much sway in determining whether somebody clicks on your game or not, because I think the thumbnail does most of that lifting. But it's nice to have a short, cogent tagline to your game. And Itch.io recommends avoid duplicating your title in your tagline, which I guess is a pretty good tip. And also, like, the best way is to put a tagline, put, your first draft of a tagline, and then search for your game. And if it's too big, then to go back and shorten it up a little bit. But fuck it, let's check out the first example. We got Animal Inspector by Tom Astle. So I do a search for it, and I'm looking at it, and it's a GIF of a dog's license or something getting stamped with a reject stamp. And to me, that it's such a good thumbnail because it tells you just in seconds, at a glance, what the game is all about. You're accepting or rejecting animals, and the tagline also adds to that too. A game where you judge animals. And in the GIF, you're judging animals. It just all works well together.
And it's got like great UI feedback. You can tell this is probably in the game. And it's all like really good looking and well designed. And it really pops. This appears to be some kind of like menu, or this might be the entire game. I'm not sure, but they made it like really satisfying and nice to look at, and so they did everything they could to make this game like stand out, even from such a simple kind of concept.
I'd say the thumbnail catches your eye, and then the GIF watching it makes you want to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how there is some meat to the GIF. It's hard to explain, but I see some GIF thumbnails on Itch.io, and the animation in the GIF is so subtle. Sometimes I don't even know that I'm looking at a GIF. I need to like widen my eyes to try and catch what's actually moving with the GIF. If it's that subtle and hard to spot, why even have the GIF in the first place? Next example I had was Dollhouse by Olivia Haynes. And this one, the animation's a lot more subtle. Not too subtle as to be what I just described, where it's hard to tell if things even being animated. There's enough movement there that you can tell something's actually going on. But I really liked this one because it has it just has a nice thumbnail of the title art, and the animation, the GIF, is just the letters kind of bobbing up and down. It's such a simple animation, but it works so well because it just has character and kind of shows the personality of the game without even having to click on the game page itself.
It's kind of like the best of both worlds, where it has an animated thumbnail, but it doesn't get bogged down with like a gameplay GIF or something else in the game. It's just the logo, but it looks like the design of the logo looks like it was made to have this bouncy movement. So it's just really like natural.
And also I like that it even without the animation, it still works as a nice thumbnail. Like if the letters weren't dancing, it still looks perfectly presentable and is an attractive thumbnail. So never feel like you're forced to have a GIF. It's nice if you have that, sure, but don't feel like you're hopeless if you just are restricted to a 2D static image. You know what had a static image on its thumbnail? Half-Life, okay?
Damn.
So no excuses. The second item on my list was an Itch.io page's background. Another very important thing you want to consider when making the best possible page you can. So the way I see it, when people do it wrong, you get a background that's white, just solid white. Or you get a background that's a solid color. And to me, that's the absolute ugliest thing you could do with a page, is make it too giant. If you're looking at an Itch.io page, you just got two giant swaths of white on either side of the actual content of the page. To me, that's just awful. It's it's awful, and it's also kind of lazy. You didn't put any effort into the presentation of the game. So a solid colored background is probably the worst thing you can do, and very, very rarely does it work with the game. So chances are you probably want some sort of custom image background with your game. There's a couple ways you can approach that, but probably the easiest thing to do is create some sort of small image or texture and tile it across the page. That will at least break up the monotony of a solid color page. It's like the next step up from solid color background. If you want to go really above and beyond, you'll make an image that's custom tailored to the edges of the page. And if you want to go even beyond that, you could have an animated GIF as the background of the page. So there's different tiers, but I would say you really don't want to find yourself in that solid color tier.
Now, for anyone who might not know, when you're talking about the background, you're referring to the left and right side of the page next to the text and title bar?
Correct.
And okay, and so there's also you have to consider the background of your copy or your text or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, the center.
Yeah, the center part.
True. Yeah. I guess those are separate elements, but I would say that you could get away with a solid color for the centerpiece more so than the left and right wings, because when you're reading text on that center bar, you don't want something visually busy going on in the background when you're trying to read text over it. It might be a little disorienting and hard to read. So I would argue that there is like the only appropriate place to have some solid text or some solid color. Although I've seen it done where creators have background images that span the entire page, centerpiece and all. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but easy play is just to have a nice solid color that probably contrasts pretty well with the font, so it's easy to read. You don't want to have pink background and then pink font unless you're crazy or something. So the first example is Legend of Xenia by Baku. And this is one of the few examples where a solid color background actually works. So I wouldn't try pushing your luck with one. I'd go for some sort of image. But here you got a solid blue background, and its color matches the centerpiece color too. So you just got a whole big swath of blue that acts as the ocean to an image of the game's map on the page.
Yeah, the title image appears to be part of the map, and the blue of the color of the ocean on that picture blends in with every other blue, like the content background and the page background.
Yeah. Very clever, very nice, very visually appealing. And the font is a nice white color, so no clashing colors there. It's just it's really nice for just a solid blue color. It works. So the second example I had was Bronzette by Tweedledum. And this is an example of a texture or wallpaper being used to fill up the empty space in the background. Sort of just the same green flower tiled along the length of the page. So it's very simple, but also it works, and it breaks up the visual monotony of what would have just been a solid off-white color if the flowers weren't there.
Yeah, and this one's got some good blending with that solid off-white that you see on the content background, and it's the same color that you see between the flowers.
And then also, to just further the point, the font color is the color of the green flowers, so it all has a cohesiveness to it.
Mm-hmm.
So another good page with another good background with not much to it. It's just a simple little drawing. Next example is called Cursed Gem by Acon CWD. And this page also was very nice with the background image, where it's got a stationary background image, but it's made up of the tiles from the game, which I think is a really neat way of incorporating the game into the page.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like you can get kind of a sense of what the game is like from the background. You can probably tell it's like a platformer or some kind of Metroidvania.
Yeah, so for that, they didn't even have to make any new art. Just take some assets from your game and just with a little bit of cleverness, turn it into a background image for your Itch.io project. And then finally, if you really got the artistic talent to do so, or the programs or whatever you need to do so, we have Try to Fall Asleep by Amber Drop. And they have a nice animated background going on that has a TV grain noise kind of filter going on in the back. Very effective in giving the page a similar atmosphere that the game, I'm sure, will present. I haven't played the game yet, but it all ties together well. It's cool to know that you can use GIFs as background images for your project if you're able to prepare one for it. You have a lot of options with this background page, so settling for just a solid color background, nah dog, just don't do that. That's a noob move right there. So tell me, would you play a game if it had no screenshots?
I wouldn't.
Exactly. Would you play a game with no thumbnail?
Well, let me rephrase. Like, given nothing else, I would probably not play a game without screenshots. I'm saying, like, if someone else like said, "Hey, this game is like the best game ever," and I went to the page, like, if someone said that and somebody I trusted, or if they made it sound like a game I wanted to play, then I don't, I guess it doesn't matter if it has screenshots or not. And for the thumbnail, I mean, if there's nothing else, if I'm just like randomly searching for games, in the context that I would see a thumbnail, if it doesn't have a thumbnail, I'm definitely not going to click on that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. You don't know what you're getting into. It could be good, I don't know, but it's there's nothing creating that want to play the game. But I guess you could argue that screenshots could create a not wanting to play the game based on what you see there.
Sure, yeah.
So screenshots also a critical part of the game. No, they're a critical part of the page. And you should most definitely have screenshots. If your keyboard has a print screen button on it, you have no excuse. You need screenshots. To me, the screenshots should depict a variety of gameplay aspects. So no two screenshots should really look too similar if you can help it. Each one should be displaying some unique aspect of the game. And so some examples of that would be, the first one would be like the primary mode of gameplay, or what the player will see the majority of the time. So for example, in Metal Gear Solid, what you mostly see is the third-person view of Snake going around, crawling around and stuff like that. But another screenshot from that game could show Snake on the radio with somebody. That could be another screenshot. And then another one could be the menu or something, showing off weapons or items or stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's a good idea to have a little variety, because that can communicate to your players that there's like a lot to do in this game. It's not going to be like too simple or something.
So you maybe want one or two screenshots of your primary mode, and the rest can show off any different aspects of the game, like if your game has dialogue or cutscenes or some sort of crafting system interface thing, then the secondary screenshots can show that off. And I would say 4 to 6 is a good number for screenshots. You really shouldn't have too few or too many. If you're doing it with too many, you're probably repeating stuff, and some screenshots look very similar to other screenshots, and so you're just wasting space on the page. And if you have too few screenshots, then you're not given the whole story on the game. So I guess aim for 4 to 6, and I'd probably say that's including the trailer for the game, because that occupies slot 1 of the screenshots on the side. So 4 to 6, including the trailer if you have one. What do you think of when people use GIFs for screenshots?
Again, it can be really eye-catching. There's a whole art to not just making screenshots, but making like GIFs. They could serve the same purpose as a trailer if it's a gameplay trailer, like showing you how the game plays. The benefit is with a GIF, like you don't have to click on the thing to play it. But you can make a bad GIF too. So it's not like you just want GIFs all the time. I don't know. I would just encourage anybody who wants to know if they should make a GIF, like maybe look up some of the information online about making good GIFs and all that.
Yeah, you mentioning bad gifs, and I see sometimes where people will make gifs, but it's of some boring part of the game where nothing happens. Like it'll be 3 seconds of a guy walking through a forest. Nothing happens. So
Yeah, they're walking and then they stop, and then like you see a mouse cursor appear on screen, and then like it like jerkily goes back to the beginning of the GIF or whatever, like bad looping.
yeah, if you're using GIFs, they need to convey something. It also shouldn't be. It should be a GIF that's a good enough length. It shouldn't be a half-second GIF where nothing was shown, nothing was gathered from that because it was so short and nothing happened. Like a walk cycle for 0.5 seconds of a guy, that doesn't tell me anything about the game except what it looks like. If you're going to have GIFs, they should be used to their full potential. And the way I see it is if your game has a lot of action or you're doing a lot of different things, then it should utilize a couple of GIFs. I feel like when it's a visual novel or something and it's just text being blitzed to a screen, that doesn't really warrant a GIF in my mind. I think the same could be gathered from a static image. And I'd also say something that kind of peeves me is when I see a game's title screen as a screenshot. To me, that's just a waste of a screenshot. Like I'll see this situation. They have a screenshot of the title menu, and it has a title art, and then the game page has no banner art. What? You could have just taken your title menu, cropped out the title art, and then put that as your banner. So we're looking at Lovely Fairy Action by Firecat1311. And, the rest of the page could probably use a little work. You got the plain white background, no title art as the banner and whatnot. But the screenshots were done very well. They utilize GIFs and static images. And the GIFs really show off the action in the game. And I like how they have a little bit of a progression to them. The first screenshot kind of shows your, this is a shoot 'em up Toho kind of game. And the first shoot 'em up shows just a couple of bullets flying and your player maneuvering. Very calm before the storm. Second screenshot shows a little bit more action, more bullets being sprayed around. I think it's of a boss battle or something maybe. And then the third screenshot, all hell breaks loose, and there's bullets flying everywhere, enemies top and bottom, just strewn everywhere. And so it shows the gamut of gameplay that you'll be coming up against when you play this game. The last two screenshots show off that it has some art for the cutscenes, and it also has some dialogue between the characters. And to me, that's just a perfect bundle of screenshots for this game.
Also, I like that they, for the most part, they kind of show 3 different abilities too. Like the first one shows like a charged shot, and the second one shows, just like a normal shot. And you get like a glimpse of something happening when they graze next to a bullet, I think. And I think that's what's happening in the third screenshot or the GIF. It looks like they're grazing all these bullets that are flying, and something's happening. So some of the mechanics are getting shown off.
I didn't notice that, but even better. Damn.
Yeah.
Let's talk about controls, bruh. This one really aggravates me when people do it wrong. Or they do it wrong, in my opinion. My super gamer armchair game dev opinion. So controls. Pretty important to know when you play a game. If you don't know them, you're going to get confused. And when you're confused, you get angry. And when you're angry, you just turn that shit off and delete it. And I'm guessing that's not what most people want the experience with their game to be. So it's good for players to know the controls when they play the game, because I would think most players don't have the patience to figure them out if it comes to that. So just bet on them being impatient and have your controls explained clearly and as early as possible. And the most earliest place you can explain them is in the page itself. I would say that the controls are so important to know that it would behoove you to have them in the game description and also in the game. Something so simple, but when it's left out, it can make or break somebody's experience with the game, which we kind of learned with Broken Silence, where our controls weren't explicitly stated, and I don't think that the tutorial note in the game was too obvious to find. So I'm sure some people, well, I am certain some people went in there blind because they were mentioning how they were trying to figure out like just how to move. Something as simple as aiming the camera left and right to look at things tripped them up because we dropped the ball when it came to conveying the controls to play the game. And they should just be in there. Like, just say you're sending your game zip file to somebody and they don't have the itch.io page for context. It's just good to have them in there. For anybody who plays the game anywhere, anyway, just have them in there. Even if it's just a Microsoft Paint image you whipped up and put in the game, just somewhere, just put the controls in there. A thing I've seen on some pages that I really like is that the page description includes an image that has a drawing of a keyboard and mouse or an Xbox controller and tells you how the keys are mapped. So it explains the controls in a very concise visual manner, which I think is a lot more cleaner than how controls are typically displayed, where it's just line by line. WASD, move, enter, interact with item, space, jump. That gets the job done, but it's not the slickest way to present your controls. So putting them in an image might be the way to go if you want your itch.io page to have a cool, slick look about it.
Yeah, I feel like when they list the controls in a text list, like my eyes are more likely to glaze over and not remember. Whereas like when they had the diagram, that even some like AAA games, they do this where you just go to controls and it just like brings up an image of the controller and a diagram saying this button does this button does that. And I think it's easier to make the connections mentally, like when you're shown the diagram, it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
So we have Robo Blaster by Daniel Moreno, and the way he's done it is he has two tables that have the controls for keyboard and the controls for gamepad. And you got one column that has the key and one column that has the action. It's very clean, very intuitive, and I'd say that's the way to go if you just have to have the text version of your controls in your description. That's not a bad way to do it.
Yeah, it's laid out really, really nicely, I think.
Yeah, it even has the banners to the columns are a nice different colored green to kind of offset the colors.
Mm-hmm. And I like that it includes the shortcuts to increase the window resolution. Like, that's really useful to know.
Yeah. But even better, in my opinion, is The Good Time Garden by Cole Supper. And here we have the image of might be an Xbox One, 360, I don't know, but it's an Xbox controller, and you got little labels with lines that assign an action to the button. X equals pick up, B equals water, A equals slap. Oh, it also has controller and the mouse combined into one image.
It's got both there, and it's super like minimalist, and I mean it blends in with the page and color scheme of the whole thing, so it's really well done.
Yeah, that's another thing. It flows with the feng shui of the whole page. Very well laid out, very intuitive, which to me I would think is your goal. Whatever you can do to reduce any sort of friction between the player and the game and the player understanding the game, the better. Another thing to note, though, is that how you tackle relaying your controls to the player might vary based on how complicated your controls are. So maybe take this tip with a grain of salt, but for games that are pretty simple, you'd do well with a table or an image. But if you got some sort of crazy RTS where every key does something unique, then maybe the image might not be the way to go. So the next important thing you need to consider on your page is its description. Descriptions to me should be on the shorter side. I don't really like reading a whole long mountain of text. I'm more about getting on to the game. If there's some interesting factoids or tidbits about the game, then sure, include those. Like, this was a submission for Low Res Jam 2019 or something, and it won first place or whatever, or something like that. That's perfectly fine, but I'd say refrain from going ham on the lore of the game or a description of it or its development or something. You can put all that easily into dev logs, in my opinion, and that's a more appropriate place for it. A nice way to segment your description that I'm seeing quite a bit nowadays is using images as headers or dividers for your description. To me, that's really nice because it visually chunks your description into pieces. And if it's a text header, even better because it tells me what that chunk is about. So if I'm looking for a specific piece of information, I can just visually scan the page and know what area I want to go to.
Personally, when I first go to a page, I don't read the text first, but I'm like scanning the images and kind of getting a glance at what the game's like, and then my eyes are going to get led to the image headers within the text or above the text, And so if you have those, then I'll be a lot more likely to read the text, I think.
Plus, just a bunch of text just kind of looks bad. I don't know, just something about it is eyes glaze over. I feel like I'm looking at some sort of lore entry from Skyrim or some shit. And dog, I don't want to read that shit. I want to read War and Peace just to understand your game. Now we're looking at Red Trees by Caramel, and this page is just really well done. Going back to the background, really well done with the simple repeating textures of some stars. Really nice. But focusing on the description, it has nice simple dividers with some animated sprites sprinkled in to give the dividers some pizzazz to them. And they are sprites taken from the video game. So it all kind of comes together in just a really solid way of visually divvying up the text rather than having two giant paragraphs. I guess the only thing that, maybe could have been done to enhance it or whatever is the first header said description and the second header said, about or something like that. But I don't know. I feel like that would have detracted from these cute little dividers.
Yeah, it's almost like Caramel didn't even need it. And everything's broken up into such bite-sized chunks by these dividers. Like, I'm way more likely to read this stuff. I mean, it helps that the whole page is laid out very nicely, but it's all like very digestible and easily understood by looking at it.
Yeah, that's a great way of describing it. Digestible. That's what these borders and headers and all this do to a page and its description. It just makes it more digestible, more accessible, and more friendly than a big wall of text. And one last point about the description that I find that I like is that a little humor can add a nice spice to the page. A good game page that I think does this well is Alien Casino by Grace Bruxner. The whole page is kind of strewn with jokiness, kind of not seriousness, but it matches the game well. but it makes that page's description a lot more memorable than something that just point by point describes the game and lists off a bunch of features on it. When your controls include Alt F4 to exit, that's funny. It makes you like the game before you've even played it. Or when your testimonials include not good and a 3 out of 5, I'd say. That's pretty funny to me. And that's a lot more memorable than just kind of average Joe run-of-the-mill description. I guess if you are going for super serious, maybe shooter military game or whatever, then the joking is probably not appropriate, but a little humorous spice sprinkled into the description could go a long way. So number 6 is going to be download options. The more builds for different operating systems you can have, the better, because if you don't have a Windows, Mac, and Linux build, Linux? What the hell's Linux?
It's the singular form of Linux, obviously.
Yeah, so that's your holy trifecta or whatever, Windows, Mac, Linux. And if you're missing one of those, there's going to be a comment on your page saying, could you make this for Linux? Could you make a build in Linux? Are you thinking of doing a Mac release? And it's also nice when a page has the option for a web playable version of the game where you don't even need to download anything. But I would say that I personally like the option to download the game. And when you do have different versions of the game to download, mark the OS for the download. It really is just simple. Just if this is the Windows version, tag it as Windows so it has the Windows icon next to it. It makes sifting through your different download links a lot easier. And also, when people are searching for games by Windows, by Mac, by Linux, whatever, if your build isn't tagged as Windows, it's not going to be in the Windows search. So it only helps you to appropriately label the operating system. So to illustrate these points, we have Dolphin Island 2 by Jan Marcano and Anvil Bear. And so this page has all the downloads marked with the Windows icon, the Apple icon, the Linux icon, and it has builds for all 3 operating systems, and it even has builds for 64-bit or 32-bit operating systems. So that is like the full house right there. That is all your bases covered right there. You can't ask for more from that.
Yeah, can't do better than this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anybody to do better than this. This is really, really, really helpful.
And they're all named very cleanly. Windows 64 bits, Windows 32 bits, yada yada. No confusion there. Just straight to the point. So another nice thing to consider is the title art, aka the banner art for the page. Because if you don't supply the page with that, then the itch.io page generates just generic Arial font text that has your game's name, which to me has never looked good, so you really don't want to be without some sort of title art. It gives the game its identity, and you really don't want Arial font being assigned to your game, especially something as important as its title. That's just gross. If your game's title's an Arial font.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that. Yeah, I would say next to having a thumbnail, it's like probably number 2. What you want is just some kind of unique art.
Yeah, so simple, straightforward way is whatever title art you have in the game on the title screen, just take that, crop it a little bit to fit itch.io's undoubtedly weird dimensions they have for the banner image, and just put that bad boy in there. And I'd say just about anything is better than nothing. Because title art doesn't have to be that intricate or sophisticated or whatnot to be good. An easy way to create some title art is just to find a cool, interesting font on, free fonts or whatever website. Type your game's name in that font and then print screen that, and there you go, instant title art. If you have the artistic chops to put some little drawing or icon or something in there too, more power to you. But you really don't need a whole lot to create an adequate title art. So a good example of a title art that's not big and grandiose but still works is Infested by Graph Metal. And here we're looking at pixel art, but it's kind of a regular little bland font chosen, just the word infested, and it has a small moon position next to the D in infested. And they just have two different colors to color the letters in a horizontal fashion. And when you take it apart, deconstruct it, there's really not a whole lot to it. It's very simple. But when you have that on your page and you look at it in the context of the page, it works and it makes the page look a hell of a lot better. And there's not a whole lot technically to it that other people couldn't do to spice up their pages. Now we're checking out Glitch Phobia by BizZop and Imaginary Blend. And this is another title art that I really liked because of its simplicity. Not exactly sure on the font, but it's a very, very simple, very chic font. And what they did to make the title art is just take a couple segments of the text and slide it to create a glitched effect to the text, and then just added a chromatic aberration to the whole thing. And there you go. You got a glitch effect to your text with 2 easy steps. The whole process is 3 steps. 1, type up the name of your game with the font of your choosing. Step 2, just slide it around a little bit. 3, add the chromatic aberration. And there you go. For itch.io pages, I believe the dashboard lets you link a YouTube video or a Vimeo video. Maybe it's just restricted to those platforms, but just something to be aware of. What you want for your trailer, I think, or what I look for in a trailer that scores good marks with me, is a trailer that's no longer than 1 minute. I feel like if it's going over a minute, you're showing me too much of the game, or you're showing me parts of the game that aren't important or engrossing. So I think like 30 seconds to 1 minute is like that prime amount of time you want. It's a good length of a trailer. What do you think when it comes to trailers?
Yeah. The shorter, I don't want to say the shorter the better, because you don't want like no content in there, but 30 seconds to a minute is a really, really good target to try to hit. I think that's a great length for a trailer, especially if it's like showing off lots of content.
Yeah, because like so many trailers today, I guess it's really, especially with movies, but you got 2 minute, 3 minute trailers. Like, why don't you just show me the whole movie while you're at it and just spoil everything?
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to pique interest in the viewer and kind of tease them into saying like, oh, that was kind of interesting and left me with questions. I should play that itch.io game, or I should go see that movie, not, hey, I explain every plot beat of this movie in the trailer. I mean, they don't exactly do that, but they're not far from it.
Yeah, when it happens, it's super annoying.
And you're just shooting yourself in the foot by blowing your load there, giving away everything.
Mm.
Don't do that shit. Stop it. So we're checking out Oh My Giraffe by Nico. And if you watch the trailer, I'd say 1, don't blink. And if you don't, you'll see that it just captures the game so well in 12 seconds. It explains the game fully in 12 seconds. Now, granted, this is a jam game, so its gameplay will be more simple, but they knew exactly what to put in this trailer, which I'll give a short play-by-play. You got gameplay of the giraffe eating the fruit, so you know what the game's about. You got the giraffe being attacked, so you know what the enemies are. You know what the hazards are in the game. You got a little bit of the giraffe killing the lion, which shows you that you can kill him and fend off enemies from yourself. And then the end shows the giraffe getting killed, so the outcome of gameplay or whatever. And then it does a recap by showing a kind of title art thing. All that neatly encapsulated in 12 seconds.
Yeah, it's a beautiful trailer. Actually, I mean, they refer to it as a teaser, which I can see why they would call it that as opposed to a trailer.
True, yeah. But I feel like if they showed any more, I don't know. I wouldn't want to see any more. That's all I want to see.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want too much because then they might say, okay, well, I've seen everything there is to see. You know, like with a game this laid bare, like, you know, you really don't want to overexpose it. You just want to give them enough taste to get it, and then it's like, all right, I'm into it. I'm ready for it.
Exactly. You don't want to be watching a let's play of the game. To me, it's nice when you have edited footage from your game captured and put into a trailer, and it's not just a capturing of you playing the game. The latter kind of comes off as kind of cheap and lazy. You just opened OBS and recorded yourself playing. You didn't put any real thought into it. But I guess it gets the job done. But I would prefer an edited presentation rather than a let's play. Another kind of goes without saying thing, but your fonts and colors should mesh well with your title art, your screenshots. But it kind of takes some active thinking and not just picking the first random colors that come to your mind. You know, something that would help in that regard is looking at your game and judging what the primary color of the game is, what color appears the most in that game, and then using one of those websites that helps you pick a color palette based on a color you input. You know what I'm talking about with these websites? Yeah, Jamie, pull that website up where you can pick a palette. Maybe that's a good, neat way to pick the colors of the fonts and the backgrounds and whatnot. But make sure the colors don't clash, or the font is a similar color to the background to create readability problems. Do you have anything to say about fonts and colors?
Nothing worth mentioning, really. Yeah, just make sure it's all readable, and if you got a color scheme, make sure it looks good. That's pretty much it.
Oh, you don't want to fucking debate me, bro? Debate me, bro. Yeah,
actually, I love the 8-bit fonts. They're beautiful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really hate those 8-bit fonts or the pixel font or whatever you want to call it, because to me it's really hard to read and really just annoying. In my eyes, it's very cliche, and I would say it's only appropriate for games that have a pixel style. So, Legend of Xenia by Baku, his game was for low-res Game Jam. So, of course, it has pixely graphics. And the page, I believe, also used a pixel font. So there, to me, totally kosher. That works. It gels well. But when you have a pixel font on a game that, you know, is some 3D shit made in Unreal Engine or something, kind of a clash in vibes you're giving off with those two things. And also, don't make your font fucking huge. Some pages I come across, and the font is so giant, 2 or 3 comments fits on my screen at any one point. It's really just, I guess it's great for people hard of seeing. You don't need to break out the readers, but
yeah.
If I wanted it that big, I'd just hold control and scroll in with my scroll wheel. But then, by the same token, don't make it too tiny that I do have to scroll in to see what's being said. So to illustrate, good choice of font and color. We're looking at Kingdom Clicker by Tapehead Games. And it's got like a kind of like a Game Boy palette, not quite exactly, because I believe it's only 2 colors for the entire page. A mint green and then a darker green. And those 2 colors chosen for the page are the exact same 2 colors that appear in the game, and they're the only colors of the game. So it's like perfect color translation from game to page. So you got that, and then you also got the 8-bit kind of pixel font for this, which here it's appropriate because the game is also low resolution. Well, comments are also a big part of the page. And you should just fill your page with random comments by yourself.
Pay people to comment on your page.
Yeah.
It's not going to look crazy at all.
Comments are nice to see on a page because they give a sense of the game that other people have extracted from it. I know pages have the ability to disable comments, but I don't see why the hell you ever would. Well, I guess I do, but I'll get to that in a minute.
I think you probably have the option to like either delete comments that are, breaking some kind of rule, or you could probably like ban people or something. You can clean stuff up if it gets too messy, if you're worried about that kind of thing.
In my big-brained opinion, the only time you should disable comments is, one, if you're doing the minimalist thing, or if the game is getting so much attention and attracting so much discussion about things in the game, then I'd say there you can pull the plug on the comment section, and at that point I would have some sort of dedicated subreddit, a Discord channel, some other kind of social media outlet to organize the fans, basically, in a sense. Comments are good, but if it just becomes a laundry list of people praising your game, then, that's cool, but I think it's a little unnecessary. Oh, and I guess another reason you might disable them is if the game is a really small game jam game or something, and you just really don't care, then you can disable them if you don't want people reporting in on your page or something. If you have change logs, I'd put them in the devlog section, make a devlog post dedicated to some sort of revision or something, because I see them in descriptions sometimes, and it just makes a long description even longer, and you just get a massive wall of changelog. So unless they're very short, or there's just a couple of them throughout the game's life cycle, relegate those to devlogs. Number 2, don't have the game auto start if it's web-based. That personally just irks me so much, because sometimes I'm opening up a bunch of different tabs for games for, looking through them, research, whatever, what have you, and I don't want the game running in the background and playing the music. I have to mute the tab or mute the application in the mixer. So if you can help it, just have a click to play thing on there. Number 3, this kind of goes without saying, but don't use images or screenshots or thumbnails of stuff that's not in your game or of a different game. I shouldn't have to say this, but in case you were getting the bright idea to have a Fortnite screenshot as your thumbnail or something, just don't. Number 4, test download your game. What I mean by that, literally go to your page, download your game, and make sure it works. I can't believe how many games I played that did not have working executables. It was ridiculous. if you want to be sure of yourself and not be caught with the egg on your face, is that the expression?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Test download your game and see if it works, because that's what everybody else is downloading. So,
yeah.
Damn. And number 5, something I don't think I've ever seen on a page description, but what would be cool is if you're making like a visual novel or a game that has a lot of translations, instead of just rattling them off like a laundry list, just have like little pixel art representations of all the national flags of the language the game's available in. So, have a little American flag and then a little Japanese flag and a little Chinese flag, little Russian flag, whatever. As a nice visual way of conveying that information.
This podcast uses a song called Bossa Antigua by Kevin MacLeod, found at incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0, and the URL for that license is creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0.